Welcome to lesson number 2 in part 2 of module 5, Know What Matters. This lesson is called What Not to Do with Your Values. It's a really important message. It's going to be a short message, but I wanted to devote an entire lesson to it because how important it is. So what I want to tell you is to please be careful that you don't turn your values into rigid rules. Okay, rules like I have to be courageous at all times. If your mind's using words like should, have to, must, ought, right or wrong, then it's not reminding you of values, it's dictating the law. And there's a huge difference between values and rules. When we're children, the adults in our lives told us that if we follow this rule, we're good, and if we don't, we're bad. Right? But there's many different ways to act on values, so I don't want you to think of it in terms of good or bad. Psychologist John Forsyth compares our values to a cube that constantly shifts position. No matter what the position, you can never see all the faces of the cube simultaneously. Some will be at the front and others at the back, but the faces you can't see haven't ceased to exist. They're just not in the foreground. Right? Similarly, in any given moment, some values are prominent and others aren't. The values that we're not acting on haven't disappeared. It's just that in that moment, they're not a priority. As you go through life, our rules about how to act on our values change dramatically, but the values themselves often don't change all that much. For example, ask a 6-year-old boy how he would like to treat a little puppy, and he's likely to talk about feeding it, cuddling it, and playing with it. What he's really talking about are the values of caring and nurturing. By the time that little boy becomes a 36-year-old father of 2 children, he will have all sorts of sophisticated rules about how to look after his kids, bedtime routines, the best ways of encouraging them, rules about acceptable behavior, and so on. But the core values of caring and nurturing are the same. The relative importance we place on our values usually changes enormously throughout our lives. For example, protecting your children is likely to be a top priority value when they are young, vulnerable, and defenseless. But by the time they are middle-aged with families of their own, this value, while it won't have disappeared, is likely to be somewhat less prominent. So you prioritize your values according to where you are in your life. Another point that I want to make is to watch out for perfectionist hooks. Okay, perfectionist hooks like, I have to live by my values at all times. You don't have to do any such thing. Values are simply words that express the way you ideally want to behave. You don't have to act on them. It's a personal choice. So I encourage you to use your values as a guide because this generally leads to fulfillment and vitality. However, at the same time, I don't want you to turn them into a set of rigid rules for controlling your life. So here's another rule for the social confidence game. Hold your values lightly, but pursue them vigorously. Hold your values lightly, but pursue them vigorously. And when we do this, it will allow us to escape from what I'm going to talk about in the next video. A certain trap that a lot of us fall into. Okay, so I'll see you there.